we have the spelling.
Yes, M-A-R-I-O-N. I always go by the middle initial of J for John. Bouzis, B-O-U-Z-I-S.
Can we have your address?
314 South Park, Casper, Wyoming, 82601.
Can we have your date of birth?
June 19th, 1925.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Casper?
72 years, all my life. Wouldn't live anywhere else.
Can you tell us something about your life?
Yes, I was, when I grew up, or as I was growing up, I came from a very, very, very poor family. You know, my parents were, my dad probably would what you qualify as welfare. Then, nowadays, that's what we were then. You know, we were very poor, had to struggle. I remember, you know, at Christmas time one year, when the firemen, you know, they always took gifts around to the real poor homes. I'm sure you're aware of that, aren't you? Well, we hear a knock on the door Christmas morning, and there's one of the firemen, and he had brought a basket to our house. You know, that had some different things for Christmas dinner. I'm not sure whether we had a turkey or not then. But then they had two presents there at the house, one for me and one for my brother Mike. My brother Mike was 3 years younger than I was. And so we were excited, you know, because there was no tree and there was no presents for us. And we opened them up. Mike got a little electric train, you know, that you could kind of push and the wheels turned with it. And Marion got a doll. They didn't know that Marion was a boy. They thought Marion was a girl. So that's what I got, a doll. And I felt very hurt, but they didn't know the difference. And I went ahead and as I grew older, I participated very, very highly in football, track. I set several records at the junior high before I got bigger and heavier. I made all-state football player 3 years. And then my last year of high school, which I should have graduated, I was drafted to go in the Army. I went in the Army. I turned 18 the 19th of June. And of course, it was in the war years, you know, when we were losing a lot of people. And so they had to get down, like, you might call it scraping the bottom of the barrel, you know, to get younger people to go into the Army. And so they drafted me out of high school. I never got to graduate. I went into the Air Corps. I became a top turret gunner on a B-24, and I flew 31 missions. And thank the good Lord, we had lots of problems, but I always seemed to come back. I had a very, very devoted family. My mother and my dad and my brother were all devoted, and I was the only one in the family that had gone into the service. And my mother's hair, from being auburn when I went into the Army, was pure white when I came out, because she worried so much about me. Then after coming out of the Army, I thought, well, I had several scholarships to go play football. But the thing that I wanted more than anything was try to get an education. But as I say, even 1945, we were still poor years for us. So I thought, well, I'll take a job and work a while, work about 6 months, and then be able to go into the September college level. Well, I never made it. I worked, I bought a car, couldn't pay for the car if I went to school, so I stayed 14 and a half years with Mobile Oil. And I took several courses at the college, you know, at night school, but as far as a college degree, I do not have one. I wish I did. The other thing about it is that after working 14 and a half years in the oil fields, because of lack of education, and I'm not going to hide that, I was being overlooked many times for promotion because of the fact that they wanted college graduates, you know, for their engineers and their geologists and their mudmen. But nevertheless, I did have a good job with Mobile. And then we were offered an opportunity by a very, very dear friend of the family's, Mr. Nick. He's an old-time Greek in Casper. And he offered us the opportunity to buy the Casper liquor. So in 1962, we purchased the Casper Liquor Store. We really didn't have any money, but Mr. Nick was so gracious that he carried the down payment, and he wanted us to have the store. That's really my start at the Sandbar, in the Sandbar era. It was in 1962. I knew many of the earlier African Americans, but as far as being close to them, I wasn't, other than the fact I played football with a couple of them. That pretty well sums my life. I mean, I could go into more elaborately, but I think that's probably all you want. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to?
Marion, why don't you tell them about the Sandbar, the history of the Sandbar, what you know about that?
Okay. So then, in 1962, I went down and joined my two brothers at the Casper Liquor Store, which was on the Sandbar. That original Sandbar that you girls and boys have probably read about. That's where I was. There was, it wasn't the best part of town. There was an awful lot of poor people, an awful lot of people that were on welfare, but that was what the Sandbar was. That's the kind of people we had down there. I had many black, African American black people that were my very good friends. And I can go back and name names for you. One of the names that I'd like to give to you girls and boys is a man by the name of Taft Harris. I notice that he's on the list here. And he was probably one of the greatest athletes that ever came out of Natrona County High School. But again, times were just as bad for him. He went ahead and went to high school. He was a football player, he was a basketball player, and a trackman, and very good, very fast. But those were the trying years, even after in the era that he graduated, and there was no college in life for him. He just had to go to work, probably help his parents. The Sandbar was a place that, excuse me, it seemed like that every drifter or anything, that's the first area they hit was the Sandbar. Because they could go down there, and they used to call it, they had a place down there they called the jungle. And in that area, if they wanted anyone that maybe had committed a crime or robbed some people or something like that, they used to get 3 or 4 policemen together, you know, and they'd go down into the jungle, as they called it, and find that person, or look for him anyway, that they felt had committed this crime. There were so many black people down there that I dearly fell in love with. They were good, decent people. They worked hard, didn't make much because those were the times. And one in particular I'd like to talk about is a lady that they called Bessie Miller. She was the sweetest little African-American that I have ever known. And she used to, in the summertime, she used to sit out in her front door, you know, right on the street almost, and wave at every car. You know, she had no enemies. Everyone was her friend. And my mother, you know, she used to tell us that, you know, because of the fact that we were poor growing up, if we were able to help someone, help them, but not to announce it to the public, just do it secretly. So you are the only one. And I used to take a $20 bill every Christmas, and I used to put it in the Christmas morning, you know, she'd wake up and there was a $20 bill in her mailbox. And then she'd come over to the store and she always called me Mr. Marion. Oh, Mr. Marion, she says, I got another $20 bill from that nice person. And believe me, it really, you know, I know $20 is not much now, but in 1945 or 6, or in those early years, $20 bill was a good chunk of money. There were several of the black people, the American black people, that were great athletes. And they were well thought of in the community. Herman Belvin is an example. He was on the Sandbar, he in Geneva. And they became very dear friends of mine. I think we went to 2 or 3 national basketball tournaments from college together, and we always just had one of the most fun times that anyone would want to have. The Sandbar was a place that a lot of the people uptown, you know, figured that was not safe to go down into the Sandbar. They were afraid. And why, I don't know, because it wasn't that notorious. Maybe a few years before that, you know, in the early 30s or something like that. Actually, that was part of downtown in those days, you know. And there was a lot of crime committed. There was a lot of fightings going on, knifings and things like that. But that really was what they called the slum area of Casper. And when we went down and we took over the liquor store, you know, we had a lot of prominent people that would say to us, well, we'd like to come down and trade with you, but our wives are afraid to come down there. And really there was no reason for that, because it wasn't that dangerous, it wasn't that scary, and we always felt this way, that no matter who came in the store, you got served your turn. A lot of times some of the American or African American people would come in and they kind of go to the side thinking that, you know, there's some white people in here and they'll get waited on first. We never done things like that. When it was their turn, they got waited on. And if there's 5 white people waiting, they had to wait. That's the way that we had gained their respect. We used to for many, many years. And this isn't predominantly the American African people, but anyone that was down on the sandbar, the sandbar area, we always paid and gave them a free Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner. We would go up and see some of the restaurants, you know, and tell them, now we're going to give these people a coupon, and we want you to give them their Christmas or their Thanksgiving dinner. We did that for many, many, many years. We helped those people because, you know, because they were destitute was not their fault. It wasn't easy to survive. As I say, it wasn't easy for me to survive. Let me try and think again to give you some more.
Marion, the reason that there were so many black residents in the sandbar, would you say it's because people wouldn't allow them to get houses in other areas of town?
Well, I wouldn't say they wouldn't allow them, because, you know, I don't think even at that time, you know, there was such a prejudice, but the economy wouldn't allow them. You know, it was tough to go up. I know, like my family, my dad, the house that we rented was $10 a month. That's all. Mm-hmm. And my dad only made $44. He was on the WPA, you know, then that's a welfare program. So I suppose if they had the money, they could go somewhere, you know, and buy a home. And some of them did. They went into up on Elm Street, but it was still a restricted area. I mean, I don't think any of these people would probably not allow you to move on Center Street or something like that. But at that time, I don't think there was anyone pushing to move on Center Street.
So you don't feel like there's a lot of housing discrimination?
No, not in those days, not so ever.
But you do mention prejudice. In those days, are you talking about like 40s, 50s, around there?
I'm talking about, yes, I'm talking about, like I went into the Army in 1942, in those years, you know, and even back before that, you know, this Taft Harris that I mentioned, I think he probably would have been a student maybe in the 1936 or 37 era. And that's one of the things, you know. I like to tell a story that, I mean, how devoted and loved I was by these African American people. There was I don't know if Holly remembers it, but she probably does. Right across the street from Park School, now you know where Park School is, right across the street there, there's a clinic there now, or a real estate company. There was a drive-in there, and that's where all the high school kids hung out, you know, JK Food Ranch, they called it. Did you remember that at all, Holly?
No.
Okay. I don't want to make you old like me.
I'm getting there.
So, and that was the place to hang out. You know, that's where we hung out. And of course, in those days, really, we weren't going to bars and stuff like that. It was kind of almost unknown to the younger people to go get a case of beer or things like that. We never done it. But there was a African-American lady that worked there, and her name was Mammy. That's what we all called her. To this day, I do not know what her real name was. But we loved her, all of us. And when I got ready to leave and go into the Army, as my friends, because my mother and dad, they had no car, but as my friends picked me up, I told them I want to go by the JK Food Ranch and kiss Mammy goodbye. And so I went over there, and she hugged me and loved me and wished me luck. Because, you know, I think she loved me as much as I loved her. And then after the war, after I came home, I looked for her, and she wasn't working there at that time. She was working at a place on the sandbar that they call Fanny Bell's, and I'll come back to some of those eating places. So I found out where she was, and of course I wore my uniform, you know, so I thought I could really look smashing and dashing. And walked in and asked if Mammy was there, and they brought her up in the kitchen, and oh, she hugged me and loved me, and we told her we wanted to eat. There were 6 of us, 6 couples of us, which was 12 people. She says, honey child, she says, I can't take care of you in your uniform. you'll have to go home and change it. Because during the war years, if the base was here, they put the sandbar off limits to all the soldiers. Because there was so much prostitution and whatever there was down there, and they didn't want the soldiers to participate. So that's the reason Fanny couldn't serve me, because I had my uniform on. So I went home, changed clothes, and came back with all our 12 people, and we all had fried chicken. I mean, she brought us a big platter. I don't know how many chickens was on there, and she paid for the whole thing for all of us. And she was only a dishwasher. But that's
Marion,
kind
you
of...
have a little bit Kleenex right on your mustache. You might want to
Okay. Well, my mouth dries out.
Oh, okay.
You don't have any water?
I'll go
folks?
get you some.
Will you, hon,
Yeah,
please?
you bet.
So there was the sandbar was really noted for some of the best eating places in Casper. There was these American Africans that Afro-Americans that they opened these places up. Some of them they called them bootleggers. Now a bootlegger was someone that sold whiskey and beer. They didn't have a license. It was breaking the law, but they nevertheless done it. And along with that, they'd have their nice dinners. And many of our more prominent people would go down to the sandbar at Fanny Bell's or the Southern Mansion. And this would be maybe 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and order their fried chicken or their steaks, and they were delicious. So how's our time running?
It's so bad.
And that was one of the things that the people uptown, as we call them, you know, would come downtown, as we call our place, to have a good American African fried chicken, because they were terrific with their cooking. We never had ourselves at the store. We never had any problems with them. You know, I mean, sure, they come in, some of them, and they got a little loud, a little boisterous, but they only knew that they could only go so far. You know, that if they got any further than that, we either throw them out or call the law. There was so many, whenever there was any kind, and then I think the American African people went up and they built themselves a church. I think it was over on Grant Street in that area. As a matter of fact, I think it may still be there. We supported their church, you know, whenever they had chicken fries and things like that, they would come down and sell us tickets, you know, and sometimes we'd give them a bottle of wine so they could have with their dinners. Excuse me. But we became, thank you, dear.
It took me a while to find a cup.
That's all right. I just told him that about the how well known Sandbar was for its fried chicken in those days. You know, I say they had the Southern Mansion, they had Fanny Bell's, they had a place they called Crystal Inn, and Dewdrop Inn, they called it. There were several places down there, you know, and the uptown people, you know, would come down and have their fried chicken or fried steaks, because they were better than anything you could get in.
Were they run by Afro-American?
Yes,
Those
they
restaurants
were run by African Americans, yes. Also, I suppose I should say this, there was an awful lot of prostitution down in the Sandbar in those days. The police, as an example, didn't want it up on 2nd and Center, but if they went down and wanted to solicit on the Sandbar, they felt that that's where they belonged. You know.
Were they mostly African American women?
No, there was white women. There was just as many white women in
Okay.
that era of that part, you know. And the police, you know, left them alone. Maybe once in a month or once every 2 or 3 months, they'd come down and kind of check them over. And again, in those days, you know, marijuana and dope and all this, etc., was not that popular, even with the lowest form of people, you know. Even the poor people, we didn't have marijuana or anything like that in those days. And as things got a little bit better, you know, and as maybe some of the families got better jobs, why, then as an example, slowly, they would start moving and coming uptown. But there again, they were going like into North Casper, you know, which was a poorer area of town, you know. And it wasn't easy for them, you know. they had a lot of problems because they were black. And I look at some of the times that, you know, that I feel so good in my life that I never misused any of those people. I loved them. A lot of them were some of our good customers. And I know that we used to, among myself and my two brothers, we used to say, look, if they come in and they're a little loud, they're a little boisterous, remember that we're really the only people that allow them to come in business place. And we did. And also the Bradis Grocery. They liked them just as well as we did. I went to school with Melvin Davis. His brother's name is Bob Davis. I don't know if you folks know him or not. Bob Davis was a mailman. Melvin was in the earlier classes. I think he was in the class of 1939. And he was an outstanding football player. I mean, he reminded me a lot of Peyton that plays football now. And girls familiar with him at all. He was built just like that. I mean, his legs were just, and he could run. Very good track athlete. So those were the things that in those days, those people, the only thing that they could really participate in, they very seldom went to dances like the junior prom and things like that. I don't believe I ever saw an American African person in any of the football balls or anything like that. There was another family down
You're
there.
saying they didn't go to dances?
Pardon?
They did not go to
No.
dances?
To the best of my knowledge, Holly, I did not see any of them at the dances.
Do you have any idea why?
I don't. There was never anything put out that you're prohibited to go. But I think they just felt that, you know, they didn't belong or something like that. And so they didn't go. I started to say something about, lost my chain of thought.
I'm sorry. You were talking about Melvin and Bob Davis.
Yes, Melvin and Bob Davis. Another one was Herbie, the Mapp family, that I'm sure the name has been familiar here. Some have been good people, some have had trouble with the law. I might, you know, they were very, very, very uneducated people. A lot of those people had not gone to school at all. But there was a person down there by the name of Eddie Moon, who was a prize fighter, and he was good. But because of the fact that he was dark like this, and in those days, you know, the fighters were not really African American. There was more white fighters than there were dark fighters. And Eddie, because of that, was never given the opportunity to climb the ladder and maybe become a first-class boxer. And he worked for us for 20-some years. And he always called me Mr. Boss Man. That was he always called me that. So, as I say, the sandbar was not an easy place. You came in, and if you minded your own business, no one bothered you. Later, as our time grew at the liquor store, you know, and as our friends became more acclimated to the environment, they came more and more and more, you know, and there was no problems. Once in a while, one would come in and she'd say, look at that American, or that African American looking at me from across the street. I'm afraid of it. You know, they'd say, well, if they bought whatever they bought, we'd go out to the car with them, and probably 90% of the time, we knew them, and we said, don't worry, they're not going to harm you. Do you have any other specifics that you'd like to...
Did you have any experiences in the public schools in Casper?
In what?
In the public schools in Casper, did you have any experiences or...
Honey, I didn't understand you.
like discrimination in schools? Did you have
No. No, I'll tell you what, and I suppose, I don't know whether I'm right in injecting this, but I had just as many problems. I come from a Greek family, and I had just as many problems being discriminated as a Greek as the African Americans did being black. And I could cite several instances. I won't, because our times have changed so much now. Who would have ever thought, you know, that a Greek would have been elected to a political office? I mean, it just wasn't done. And now, throughout the United States, you see Greek congressmen, Greek senators. We had one that was a vice president. He may not have done so well, but he was a vice president of the United States. And that's the same way with the American African people. They too were able to grow some. They got a little better jobs, you know, and were able to take care of their families a little better. There was one particular fella, his name was George Smith. He was on the sandbar, and he had 3 or 4 kids. And he worked for 20, 25 years at the Petroleum Club. Well, the Petroleum Club, you know, was a very, very nice high-class place for all the oil people. And they got to love him so much. I mean, when he finally retired, they gave him one of the biggest retirement parties in that era that had been given. There was another family that lived down there, the Crutchers. This man, I don't know what his first name was, but he had a little stand, probably maybe just about this size of this table, and he had it full of magazines, current magazines, and full of newspapers, current newspapers and everything, and people would come by and buy their newspapers and magazines from him. That's the way he made his living. That's the way he supported 7 or 8 children that he had. I'm sure he probably got a little bit of help from relief or whatever there was, but he was so proud, you know, and he was crippled. He was crippled. His feet were in the awfulest shape that you would have seen, but he managed to walk and handle that magazine cart of his every single day. He had a top fixed on it so he could lock it, you know. And I don't believe in my time that I ever heard of anyone breaking in there to hurt him and take his newspaper or something.
Would he be out in the wintertime too?
Yes, yes. He had it right on the corner where Woolworth is now.
Mm-hmm.
He had that, at that time there was a big store called Walgreens, you know, Walgreens Drugs. Mm-hmm. And that was really the heart of Casper, the downtown area. And that's where he had it, you know. And he raised a family, and some of the girls became very talented musicians. So as I say, the first, as the people grew, you know, and came into another generation, they gradually bettered themselves. And that's at the times, you know, that they would move out of the sandbar. And then in I believe it was 1982, urban renewal came into Casper. Now, urban renewal was a federal funded entity. And their idea was to go into these slum areas and clean them up. So they came into the sandbar area, and there was a few of the black people that owned homes, you know, down there, and they bought their homes from them, and they gave them probably a little better price than they were actually worth. But it gave them an opportunity to move uptown somewhere and maybe buy a little home. So many of those people were able to do that, and that's gradually, slowly, it took about 2 or 3 years, I think, they cleaned the sandbar up. They cut prostitution entirely. It's illegal in Natrona County. And the area down there was just from 3 or 4 bars that they had down there, there's only one left, and that's ours, Casper Liquor and Sandbar Lounge. So you girls that are still young like this, you probably can never ever visualize what the sandbar was in those days. There would be what we call them cat houses. And am I all right with that?
Yes, you go right ahead.
They called them cat houses, and that's where these prostitutes, and they wouldn't have just a little tiny room, and then they had the front window up, and they'd wave at every car, come on in, come see me, you know, and stuff like that. Well, they cleaned that area all completely up. Now, where those people went, I don't know. But the American African people spread out. Some went into high school, some went to Kelly Walsh. There were some good athletes that come out of Kelly Walsh, and some went to Natrona, depending. Gordy Bannister was another person that I knew real well, and he was awarded the Chamber of Commerce Youth Award for all his work in doing different things for any organization that needed help. And Gordy was a very, very well-liked person. He left probably in 81 or 82 when the oil company started moving out. Gordy worked for some company then, and they transferred him out. And I think basically, I don't know how much more I could tell him. You have some
Well, I have a couple follow-up questions.
Yes.
Would you tell them what the area of the sandbar was, what streets
Yes,
we're looking at?
and I'll tell you why they named it the sandbar also.
Okay.
Before they built Alcova Dam and Pathfinder Dam, when the heavy rains came, and I know when we built our liquor store, you know, my uncle came in there, and he says, you can't build that store on that level. And I says, why, Uncle George? Because he says the floods. He says they'll flood that place, and that's why they called it the sandbar. In the early springs, there was no place to catch the water, you know, up above like they do now, which they catch them in Seminole, Pathfinder, and Alcova. And so that water just came down in there, and it flooded a lot of those places. And it's a predominantly real sandy area. And that's where the name Sandbar came from. And those streets, there was a street there that started off, it was Nichols Street. And that was named after Nick Nichols. His wife's still alive and she still lives here. But he owned quite a few pieces of property there. He was not Greek, he was Bulgarian. And Nick Nichols, they named that street after him. Am I taking too long?
No, go right
Okay.
ahead.
They named that street after him, and then from Nichols Street, then came Ash Street, which was our street. Ash is still there. It runs. It's one of the arterial streets to getting uptown. You know, a lot of the to get out of town, get off for a while, and it was a notorious area in the real early years. They had knivings. And it wasn't always done by American Africans either. There was just as many white people that were involved in this. You know. It might have been with some African Americans and some white people, but they were never, you know, it wasn't just strictly one race or one color of people.
You talk about in the early years. What are the early years? We're talking about the years from what, like about 1930 something to 1982?
We'd probably go back, Holly, I'd probably like to go back myself because I don't remember that much. I do remember. See, I went into high school in 1941, and I knew some of those people because, you know, my family in the early years lived on the sandbar. My dad had a pool hall, which is a billiard parlor. He had a barber shop, and he had a lunch counter. My dad worked at the Standard Refinery at that time, and he built this building himself, and because of that, I knew some of the people down there. And but that era that goes back, that was a more notorious area. It was after you go back from say 1939, and it was controlled by police. They would come in there, and of course they raided these places and fined them, and tried to control at least to keep the fights and murders and so on, to keep them as limited as they possibly could. And that's the best I can do as far as going clear back. Holly.
Okay. Well, you've given us perspective here. I want to follow up on a couple of the people you mentioned. If you know what happened to them, where they are now, Taft Harris. Do you know where he is or what?
Who? Taft Harris? I have no idea. The only thing I knew, he went out on the West Coast somewhere.
Okay.
And I have no idea.
What about Bessie Miller?
Bessie Miller has died.
Okay.
She died, 15 years ago.
Okay, Herman and Geneva Belving.
Well, they're Casper people. I mean, they've lived here many, many years. They've raised, I don't know, 6 or 8 children. I know some of them. I don't know them all. They lived, I believe, on North Lincoln.
There's somebody we should probably talk to then, right?
Well, Herman is dead.
Okay.
Geneva is alive. And she's a very gracious lady. You know, whenever we see each other, we do hugging and kissing.
Okay.
And I'm sure that if you were to call her, I'm sure that she would, you know, be willing to talk to you.
What about Mammy? Has she since died?
Yes, she's since died, and I have no idea whatsoever. You know, as I say, I feel bad because I don't even really know her name. To go up at the cemetery and just put a flower on her grave, because she was such a gracious person to us young kids, all of us, not just me. There was a lot. And to give you an example, there's a fellow by the name of Chester Broadnack. He's still alive. He still lives in Casper.
We've interviewed him.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, matter of fact, the kids had a good story in the Casper Star Tribune with his picture. It was Stephanie and Chester.
Oh, was it? All right.
Yeah.
Well, Chester was good. I can tell you a little joke about him if you'd like to hear it.
Love to hear it.
He came, and we always charged him, you know, he worked for the government at the post office. And we always charged him, you know, about, $8 to $10 a payday, you know, beer and wine that he wanted to get. So he come in, and he would always pay it on payday because he'd cash his check. And his checks were never over $100. They were always less. Now that was for 2 weeks, so you can imagine. Nowadays you get $100 a day instead of, you know. And he, excuse me, he would come down, cash his check, and he'd want one $20 bill and all the rest in ones. And he would take the $20 bill and put it over the ones, you know, in a big old rubber band. And when he pulled that money, it looked like a wad of money, a lot of money, but it was 20 and then all the ones. At this particular time, he came to us. I was there, and my younger brother Mike was there. And my younger brother was talking to him, and he says to him, Mr. Mike, he says, I just can't pay you this payday. And Mike says, well, why, Chester? You're supposed to. Well, he says, I got to have my teeth fixed. And excuse me again. Mike says, well, what do you have to do? Well, he says, I have to have new teeth. And Mike said, well, Chester, why in the God's world do you want to spend $200 to buy new teeth? Why don't you go up to the Bustard Funeral Home? He said, whenever they bury a person, they don't bury their teeth with them, their false teeth. Excuse me. This is an honest to God's true story now. They take them and throw them in bushel baskets. So if you go up there and see those people, and you can get a pair of them for $10, you go up there and just keep trying on until you get a pair that fit you. And Chester kept looking at Mike and looking at Mike, and Mike didn't crack a smile. And finally Chester says, Mike, he says, where is that place? So those were, you know what I'm saying, they were good people, they were gullible people, and sure, there were some toughies in there too.
Mike was pulling his leg, right?
Yeah, Mike was just joking with him, you know.
Mary,
Sure.
in the liquor store itself, it was run by you and Mike?
Mike and I and my older brother Tony.
Okay.
3 of us, and they all 3 have passed away since then, you know. And I wish sometimes, because Brother Tony could really elaborate on the place, because as I say, when my mother came over from the old country, and my dad had built that place on the sandbar. Remember where the glass house was down there for many, many years? Well, it was there anyway, and there used to be a theater, a Columbia Theater right across the street, and there were 2 bakeries, Walter's Bakery. They made some of the best dinner rolls and sweets that you've ever eaten, you know. They were all down in this area. But
What is the cinema? What was the name of it?
the what? Columbia Theater.
Oh, Columbia Theater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there was 2 or 3 grocery stores down there even. I mean, there was the Westby grocery store, and it was run by Greek people. There was the Bradis grocery. It wasn't Bradis grocery in those days. It was the Mellis, M-E-L-L-A-S, Mellis grocery. And that was run by Greek people. And then there was one on the corner, right south from where our store is, and it was the Edgington grocery. And I think it was run by some different race of people. I don't remember what they were.
Do you have a favorite memory about Casper?
About the sandbar? The memory, two of the memories I had is when Urban Renewal came down there. Well, first of all, Mr. Nick is what they called him. He was one of the finest gentlemen, and he was friends.
Want to change that to tape recorder?
I did.
Oh, did you? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
He had so many friends, you know, that were politically influential, Mr. Nick did. And they respected him, and he was, you might say, kind of the king of the Greek community. When they wanted anything or anything like that, why, they went to Mr. Nick. And when Mr. Nick sold us the liquor store, and the black people found out about it at that time, I bet you there was 20 of them that came down there crying. What's going to happen to our Mr. Nick? Because he always gave them money, he always would pay their doctor bills. You know, he was just a good Samaritan to those people. And they were crying because they were afraid, because he sold us the liquor store, you know, that he was going to leave. Well, he didn't leave. He lived right above the street where the old Bradis grocery store was, and stayed there till the days he died. And that's one of the things that stays in my mind. And then also, it stays in my mind how I miss some of those people after we changed and went into, you know, when they cleaned the urban renewal up, because those people scattered out. The majority of them didn't have cars. And it was very difficult for them, you know. If they lived in North Casper, they would go to that liquor store there. And so gradually we just lost contact with that. And one thing that I really regretted. Just like the other day, I happened to see Jimmy Simmons. I don't know if you folks are, he's not back in that era. But he is an American-African person he and I have grown to be very, very close. Saw him in the grocery store the other day, and we hugged each other. And that's the feeling that I had. I don't think there was, in Wyoming and in Casper, I don't think there was all the prejudice against the American-African people as maybe you find in your bigger cities or all over the world. Is that?
Crystal?
Do you have a worst memory about Casper?
Do I have a what?
A worst memory?
About Casper? Well, I'll tell you the worst one, I suppose, and I imagine there's a lot of people that this doesn't really tie on to Casper, to the sandbar, but it affected us. where in 1982, 83, 84, when all these oil companies started moving out, and they had so many well-paid people that lived good, supported the community, and those people were being taken out of Casper and shipped to other parts of the country. And gradually, you know, we must have lost in that era, we must have lost 15 to 20,000 people. And that was the area, you know, people would come down and say, well, we're leaving, Marion, good luck, and so on and so forth. And the other one is when they closed the Amoco refinery. Because we had so many customers from there that when they got off work, they came right up First Street, would come into the liquor store and buy their six-pack of beer, and then continue their way home, which was on the east side of town. Those were the areas. Casper, as far as Casper's concerned, Casper's been very, very good to me. As I say, I was born and raised here. I would never live anywhere else but Casper, Wyoming. And, 10 or 12 years ago, I was the first Greek person that was ever elected to any political office in Casper. I ran for city councilman very reluctantly because I didn't think I could win. And I was the top vote getter out of 11 people. So that kind of gives you an idea that our family was well thought of, even though my parents were immigrants. You know. But nevertheless, we were well thought of. And speaking about immigrants, there was when my mother went down there, when my mother came over from Greece, because my dad was already here, she had stopped in, I think, Algeria. And the boat stayed there, I don't know, for a couple of days for repairs, and so they let all the passengers off. And my mom bought a parrot. And, oh, I hated that bird. I couldn't touch it. You know, and the beak that they have, they'll bite and just darn near take all your finger off. But anyway, in that era, when my dad had the smokehouse and the restaurant things there, my mother would walk up the street, and the parrot would follow her. That's the honest to God truth. I can remember that. So, I guess that's kind of my good memories and my bad memories of it. I tried to, as time grew by, because a lot of those people were even older than I was, and they started passing away. I made every effort that whenever one of them passed away, that I was at their funeral to pay my respect, because that's the way I felt about those people.
Do you have any more relatives in Casper?
Have more what?
Relatives?
Yes, I have 4 children in Casper. One is a dentist. My daughter is married to an attorney, and then I have 2 girls that are, one of them is going on to a higher education. She's going post-grad. And then my other daughter works here. She works at Penny's. So I have, all my family is here. I have, my brothers are all gone, of course. My mother and dad are gone, but I do have several nieces and nephews here.
Do you have their names, their daughters?
You want my daughter's name? Sure you can. My son's name is John Boses, John L. Boses. Make sure you specify that if you're going to do it. And my daughter's name, do you want a married name? Is that what you'd like? Mm-hmm. Vicky McCarty, M-C-C-A-R-T-Y. And then Maria Boses. And Evangelia, that was my mother's name, Evangelia Boses. Can you spell that all right? E-V-A-N-G-E-L-I-A.
Marion, those high school grad lists, do you know any of them, what happened to them?
The graduates?
The ones that I mailed to you, the list?
Yes, there was, well, an awful lot of those, you know, some of them were before the war years, you know, and then some of them were after. And this is one of the things that I've always puzzled myself, is why a lot of these people, and I can go, I had my wife X the ones in red ink, you know, that I knew well. When they finished school, or when the war years came, you know, they either went into the service, or they went out on the West Coast, you know, and went to work in the shipyards and places like that, and they never came back. And something that has always amazed me, and I'm going to put it in this if you don't mind, is, you know, every year we graduate some African American boys and girls. Where do they go when they graduate? They don't stay in Casper. We have no one on the police force that I know of, no one on the sheriff's office. The hospital, it has 1,000 nurses and so on, and they have very, very few American African people working there. And it puzzles me is when these kids, when they graduate, where do they go? There was another one here, his last name was, well, he changed his name 2 or 3 times. You may have even remembered him, Holly. Morgan, I think it was. Ken Morgan. And he scored 100 points in a basketball game all by himself. He went on to play, played at the University of Wyoming, and was a great athlete there. And he tried out professionally and didn't make it, but came back to Casper, and had back problems, you know, and he was never able to really get a hold of himself. I don't even, he lives in Casper, but I never see him anymore.
Those are the kinds of names we'll follow up on. And see what we can
Ken
find
Morgan
out.
Clark is what his real name is out there. And I know he's here, unless he's left maybe within the last year or so.
Okay. So on the graduation list, did you mark where you thought they went or what?
No, I didn't. I didn't know. Because as I say, the majority of these people, a couple of them even end up in the penitentiary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I didn't do that. I didn't know whether I was going to have to read this list or not. And so I did have my wife redline them, you know.
Okay.
But that's basically about the best I can give you on where they went and what they done. Bert Miner, the Miner family, he went to Denver and is a postman. I'm sure he's retired by now. And Kenny Hayden, who was a good fighter, a good boxer, he is in Denver somewhere, you know. But you know, when their families, American black people are very, very devoted people. You know, they love their families. That's one thing that I've always admired about them. And once their mothers and dads, as an example, have passed away, then that doesn't give them any reason to ever come back to Casper, Wyoming, except maybe on a reunion basis. You know, they might. But they very, very seldom ever come back here. And like I was saying, I wonder why those people, some of those people, don't apply for these jobs, because, you know, they have good chances to get them.
Especially in these days. How did you want to handle the lists, and can you, if your wife redlined them, what is that telling us? I mean,
That I knew them,
okay,
or knew of them. Yeah, I can give you this list. You can have it.
great.
As far as, yeah. And see, like going into the Kelly Walsh era as an example, those, I didn't know a lot of those kids because they came from families, you know, that maybe lived down there on the sandbar, but they can have this list, and I think she did, she redlined, and I wrote a few more down that I had, yeah, she's,
You added some names?
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some names here that we've added, so you can have that if you like it. Do you feel that you have anything else that you'd like to ask me?
Anything else? No?
How about you, young man? You haven't said a word.
That's all, I guess.
Let me ask you kids one thing. Have any of you gone to school with an American, African-American person? And how do you feel toward those people? They're good people, aren't they? Yes, they are.
Yeah. Well, we have an Afro-American student working with us too. He was at church this morning.
Who was he?
Yeah.
Who was he?
Josh Jackson.
Yeah,
There are
his
a lot of
dad. I knew his
Josh.
dad. Yeah,
Yeah.
Rex Jackson. No, not Rex
Grady.
Jackson.
Grady is his father.
Yeah. See, and some of those people, they worked. Some of them did work for the post office. We had 3 or 4 of them that I imagine retired from the post office.
Well, Marion, I think this has been very informative. Don't you agree, you guys? Really, it gives me more of a page. By the way, Dorothy, if they ask you any question you don't want to answer, feel free to say, let's pass on that one, okay?
Okay.
Can I have your address again?
1541 South McKinley.
Can I have your date of birth?
6/25/30.
How long have you lived in Casper?
48 years.
Can you tell us something about your life? About some lives of others in life?
Something about myself.
Just tell us about your life. Were you born and raised here, or?
No, I was born in Florida, STKE, Florida, right out of Jacksonville. Came here and I was married at 16. Had a daughter then, and her name Vivian.
What year did you come here?
Came here in what? 48, 47, 48.
So you're almost a native, huh?
Just yes.
Why did you come here from Florida?
I was married at the time, and my husband's job brought him here. We went from Florida to Georgia to California, and from California here.
What was your husband's name?
Herbert,
Herbert? How do you spell that?
Herbert.
And what did he do then?
Was working with a government project in in Army bases.
So did he work out at the Army base out there at the
Yeah.
airport? Okay.
Yes.
There seems to be a lot of common history that seems to revolve around that, so. Okay. So tell us about your life in Casper when you arrived here at 16.
Well, I really don't want to talk about that right now. I don't have it together in my head. But it was kind of rough and getting started and at that age and whatever. One of the things I had never in my life saw snow, and we weren't prepared for the cold and winter weather here for his clothing and lots of other reasons. But it was pretty rough. I was very ill at the time. My husband and I were young, didn't know very much about how to survive. Well, my daughter was born, and like I said, I was 16. She was born when I was 16. She was born breech. We at that time in Stark, they didn't know anything about hospitals or anything, so we had what you call a midwife delivered her. She weighed 9 pounds 10 ounces, and I was
Wow.
16 years old. So I was pretty ill when I got here from that, but it was pretty rough, but we survived. Did great.
Just one daughter then, or?
No, I have 5.
Okay, can you tell us their names and tell us where they are?
Okay, I have my oldest daughter is in Seattle,
And her name?
Vivian. Farnsworth is her last name.
Okay.
And next to the oldest daughter is named Teresa,
And how do you spell that?
Tearea. Am I going too fast? Okay, Tearea, Ther.
What an interesting name.
And yeah, and her last name is Hamilton.
And where is she?
Seattle also. I have a son, oldest son, and his name is Farrell. Lives in Casper.
Spell his first name.
Farrell.
What does he do here?
Well, he's electronic engineer. He works in the medical field with the blood labs. He goes all over the state of, well, he's working out of South Dakota now, but he used to work all over Wyoming and Colorado, but he's now basically out of South Dakota. And while mentioning his name, he was the first black trooper. And that was during the time, and I don't
The marching band, the Troopers?
Right.
Oh, okay.
And that's when they were, don't ask me what year because I can't remember right now, but it was when they were national champs.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so Vivian, Teresa, Farrell,
Oh, you got two more, the two young ones. Okay, and Reese, R-E-E-C-E, Burrow.
And where's Reese?
He's in Billings, Montana. He works with UPS.
Okay, and
Mary.
Mary Burrow?
Mm-hmm.
And where's
No,
Reese?
Soneson now, but it was Burrow then. What do you want? Which one name do you
Or
want?
what her name is now?
Soneson. S-A-N-E-S-O-N.
And where's she?
Casper.
What does she do here?
Works at Sally's Beauty Supply.
Did they all go through the public schools
Every one
here in
of them.
Casper? Which
Every one
ones?
of them. All of them.
What kind of experiences did they have in the public schools here?
Great. I mean, not great, but they were all very active in school. They were in the junior follies. They played in, well, the youngest son was in every sports that he played for NC. Mary played volleyball and junior volleys, and even she played football. What was it called? The girls played.
Which elementary school did they go to?
Elementary. Roosevelt
Roosevelt, when it was a,
School.
elementary school. And then,
Elementary school. Yes.
okay.
Was it? Okay. There's two over there. There's Roosevelt and the other one. What's it called?
Why did, out of your 5 children, 3 have left? Why did they leave after graduation? They all graduated, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the reason I asked that is this morning we interviewed Marion Bozes, and he says he's really curious why so many of our African-American youth leave and don't come back.
Okay, well, I can tell you that, because I know of some, my kids hung around. I mean, my oldest son is still here. He went in the Navy and taken some electronics there, and then came back, got a job here, and he's been here. On the next to the oldest daughter, Teresa, she went down to the University of Wyoming and graduated there. I mean, finished there and got a degree in teaching, and no job was available for her. So I really admire her because, with her master's, that kind of degree and whatever, she was flipping hamburgers at Burger King. Oh, yeah, it was Burger King. And also she was working at the library, so she was doing both, and it was just hard for her to make a living, and I mean, she had a young daughter too, which she was trying to put through school, a single mother at this time. And so she was offered a job in Seattle as manager of one of the, at Burger King. And she went down because, she couldn't get a job at, here in Wyoming as
So
a
it's
teacher.
basically
So-
lack of availability of jobs then.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Can we go back to your life? Talk a little bit more about that? No? What did you do for a living? Or were you a housewife? Did you work?
Oh, I worked, yes. Yes.
Where did you work?
Cleaning houses when I first came here, and then for 9.5 years I worked down at Natona County Library. Then I went to work at the hospital. I was only there for a short period of time. And then from there I went over to Wyoming Youth Treatment Center, which is called, before it closed, was When I went to work there, it
That
was
one right
called,
behind us,
yeah,
yeah.
on 12th, yeah. So I worked there for 5.5 years.
What'd you do there?
Well, I was, they call it at the time, house parent. We were just there, well, I guess you'd say kind of a glorified babysitter. We did some everything with the kids, really. But we had to be nurse and counselor and, you know, and especially when we were on shift by ourselves. But that's very rewarding, though.
Do you have a worst memory about Casper?
Hmm?
Do you have a worst memory about Casper?
No,
Do you have a favorite memory?
Oh, yeah, a lot of those, you know, because that's where all my kids were born here, and we did lots of fun things. They were involved in lots of activities and doing things. Yeah, it was great. They did real well, real proud of them. They didn't come out perfect like I was trying to raise them, no. But
They have a tendency to do that to us, don't they?
but they turned out great.
Did they have any discrimination, or did you have any discrimination?
Well, I'm sure that there's always discrimination wherever, whenever. I remember Mr. Jones, Jim Jones, that was at that time was head of the troopers, and he called me one day at work and said, was my son having any problems with being the only black and the first black in the troopers? And I said, Mr. Jones, I tell you what, if there is any problems with anybody, they're going to have to tell him, because he doesn't see any different, because he's never been taught that. So if there is any problem, somebody's going to have to tell him, because he doesn't, you know, he's never been taught that there was any difference. You know. So he did great there. He stayed there until his whole term of, until he turned 21, or 18, 21, whatever, that time.
Do you have any other relatives there?
I was the first one that came out here, and then my mother came out and stayed here for a while, and then my sister came here, and then her kids came out. Well, two of them came out before she did, and then she came out later. So my mother, sister, and niece, nephew, and then they stayed here. The niece is still here. The nephew, and that's one of the things when you ask why did some of the kids leave, he was one of the ones also that did great here in Casper, and his name was Willie Joe Mathis. He was drum major for NCS, and he was when he went up to Casper College, he was student body president, and he really wanted to stay here, but he couldn't get a job. And I think that's probably one of the things too, that was because of the color of his skin. He didn't. But he did go to Canada, and he's been there ever since, and he's been teaching there.
Where's your sister now?
Hmm?
Where's your sister now?
My sister is now down in Laramie. She's very ill and has been for quite some time. She has MS, and she's the oldest one out of 5 girls. Oh, I want to tell you about my mother. She's 92 years old, and she's just still going great. She's in Florida. She left and went back to Florida. She's 92 and doing great. Not great, but, you know, for 92, she's very alert and still getting around and doing things herself.
You think that Willie Joe, though, didn't get a job because of the color of his skin?
Yeah, and
Really?
also, yeah, and another one too, about the same time was Billy Sue, Mrs. Rucker's daughter. Did she tell you that?
She just
Yeah.
talked about her daughter dying, passing away. That was.
Now, Billy Sue went on too to, where was she? She taught in Chicago too. She didn't get it. I don't know. I wouldn't say for sure that she wanted a job here, but I know she also left and was a teacher. You know,
It'd be interesting to
Up
look
until the
back and
time.
see how many Afro-American teachers there have been in this district around that time.
See, so I mentioned 3 that I know of.
Mhm.
My daughter, my nephew, and Billy Sue. You know, and I'm sure there's others because my mind just isn't, you know.
Who's your niece?
My niece that lives here,
Mhm.
Gloria Downey.
And what did she do?
Memorial Hospital, and then she worked with Golf Off.
Would Kurt be any relation?
That's his mother.
That's what I was wondering. I had Kurt in class, so.
Did you? Kurt and Kenny, yeah.
You bet.
Mhm.
And do you have a number where we can get hold of her? Or?
Yes. You gonna give it to you later?
Sure, that'll be
Okay.
fine. Well, let's be sure to ask her for that then.
Okay.
What about housing? Did you ever come across any housing discrimination? I mean, you couldn't move to some certain part of Casper, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
I mean, not, it wasn't, okay, when I first came to Casper, and the first lady that my husband and I had rented, a room at that time for her in her house, she told us that the way she got that house was that she came with a person by the name of John Tripany, who's a prominent businessman here in town, and she came with them as the maid to look at the house. And I don't know all of the details about it, but that's one of the things that I know, that's how she got the house. And the address is 447 North Washington. And many years later, I bought a house at 1033 North Beach. And I didn't know this, but when I received, if you want to probably verify it, you probably could go down to the courthouse. I was asking someone about it. And on that title, it said that that house was not supposed to be sold to any blacks. And because, that's been quite a few years ago, and I bought 3 more houses since then, but, and I don't know if I could, find that title or not. But,
I'm trying to, this John Tripany, when you first came here, this was 447 North Washington, you lived in a room in this house?
correct.
And did this woman own the house?
Yes, she did.
And she bought it through John Tripany, or?
Correct.
Okay. But you have knowledge of people, if not yourself, other people not being denied access to housing in some parts of Casper because of the color of their skin?
Well, no, because I guess at that time, it was such a hush-hush thing, and I don't think they made it known, but they had it written up, and they had to have, because, I'm talking about many years later, when I bought a house, and this is what, this organization had bought these houses up and had control of them, so that they wouldn't be sold to,
What organization?
I don't know I can't remember right off. And I wouldn't want to call any names or anything, I'm not sure.
The list of graduates that you're saying, did you get that? The list of graduates?
Yes, and there's a lot of names that's not on And I didn't have time because it's been really bad. Because for an instance like that kid that I just, several of them, that's,
Is it okay if we borrow this? We'll get it returned to you. I want
Sure.
to make sure we get a copy of it.
yeah.
We have a lot of things we need to copy. We're trying to get some help from Casper College with some of this stuff right now. So a student out of Casper College to do some copying for us and those kinds of things, so. Could you take time sometime and go through that graduation list and add names, and when you have that, just give us a call, okay?
Sure. Mhm.
Also, any, like I said, archival type information like this Gordy Bannister article, anything from the past that you might have would be wonderful that we can copy, okay? Any family photos or anything like that. Is there anything else you can tell us about the Afro-American community here that's...
Well, one of the things, I didn't have time to dig that out either, but I don't know if you know this, but this is history that the first elected coroner in Casper was a black man. And we, as a club, went out to the cemetery many years ago and put in a headstone out there. So it might be, it'd be real easy to find out where it's at and his name. We also gave that slab that we, that they had as a headstone to Fort Casper, and I'm not sure if it's still there or not, but I'm sure I have some clippings, and you could go out to the cemetery probably and find out exactly where it's at. And
Do you remember his name, Chris? Yeah, we discovered
Matt
that. We
Canfield.
found that. Oh,
Did you?
Matt, what?
Canfield?
Yes, okay, thanks.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was, we found that in part of our research last spring, so.
Okay.
But no, that sounds great. It sounds like it'd be a good trip for us to go out to Fort Casper and find that out, too. What club are you talking about?
The name of the local club was Harmony Arts at that time, and it was,
How'd you get in the building? Oh, okay. This is Josh Jackson.
and it was the National Association of Colored Women's Club at that time. And we were a local group.
Mrs. Rucker gave us some, I'm wondering if this is the same club or if you're talking about a different club.
Well, now, she and I didn't belong to the same club. It was several, we belonged to the same national, but we had about 3 clubs here in Casper. That's just how many members was here at that time.
And yours was called the Harmony Arts?
Uh-huh. And we're the ones that put the headstone out there.
And this is NAACP Women's Club?
No,
No?
National Association of Colored Women's Club, not the NAACP.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any idea when this took place?
Kind of, sort of, I'm sure, yeah.
Do you know about how long ago?
Uh-uh.
Yeah, Myrtle gave that to us and she couldn't remember either, so.
And there's some of the Jackson kids. There's the mother to the Bannister kid there, too. That I just gave you that clipping.
What did your club do, the Harmony Arts Club? What was the main focus of it?
Well, doing community and things and social gatherings. We participated in, for instance, like collecting for March of Dimes and, and doing a lot of community things.
Did, what church, do you go to church?
Mm-hmm.
What church do you belong to?
Grace Chapel AME Church.
Yeah. We've even talked about going down to a service there sometime, so. You may see us there.
Okay.
Is there anything else you can share with us right now? Do you guys have any more questions? Okay. Well, we'll tell you what, thank you very much for doing this with us, and would you please be thinking about,
Can we have your name so we can spell it right?
Alvin Lassie.
would you spell it for us so we make sure we have it all right?
E-L.
E-L?
No, P-L-A-C-I-D-E.
Can we have your address?
222 West B, apartment 205.
May we have your date of birth?
11/6/18.
How long have you lived in Casper?
No, I came here in 1947.
What brought you here, Elvin?
Me and my wife was on the way to Billings, and it was a porter on the train. He said, "Won't you stop in Casper and go to Mary's Eat Shop?"
And?
And I went to Mary's Eat Shop, and there was some people in there gambling. And so we looked, and I sat down, I think, and I got in the game, and I win $370-something.
Wow.
Yeah, and then after that, me and my wife talked and thing, and I said, "Well, look like this is the place for us." And she stayed and was a waitress for Mary Eat Shop.
And you?
I went to Billings because the luggage was on the train and went to Billings. So I had to go to, I went to Billings and got it and brought it back here.
Where were you coming from?
Oh, we were coming from Cheyenne. We were coming from Cheyenne.
They're just opening Warfield. Is that where you lived in Cheyenne?
Yeah, for about a year.
Where prior to Cheyenne?
Huh?
Where were you before Cheyenne?
San Francisco.
Born and raised there, or
Hmm?
is that where you were born and raised?
No, I was born and raised, born in Fort Arthur, Texas, raised in Lake Charles, Louisiana.
How did you get from Louisiana to San Francisco? I mean, what brought you there? What?
Well, the war was getting over with and things were getting slow everywhere. And my wife's brother was in San Francisco, and they were very close. And he went to my wife's home in Shreveport, Louisiana, and he told her that, "Well, why don't you come to San Francisco?" And that's how we got to San Francisco.
Okay. And then San Francisco to Cheyenne? What took you
Yeah,
there?
from San Francisco to Cheyenne.
What took you to Cheyenne? I mean, that's a San Francisco, California to Cheyenne, Wyoming. What would cause a change like that?
Well, the same thing. Well, I said I'm a gambler, and that's what brought me there.
Okay.
That's what brings me anywhere. Yeah,
Cards?
cards and dice.
And so you went to Cheyenne to gamble.
I went to Cheyenne. Yeah, I went to Cheyenne to gamble,
Okay.
and I never did like a soldier town. There was too many soldiers for me. And so then a lady from here. No, these are people I just met here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is the money coming from the restaurant or from gambling or both?
gambling from both.
Okay. Was there, this was a sandbar area then, right?
Right.
Was there a lot of gambling there?
Oh yeah, it was they was gambling, you know, in these places. See, after everybody get to eating and drinking what they want to think, and somebody said, "You got a pair of dice?" The people they were with wanted to shoot dice. So I said, "Yeah." And so that the way it got started in the gambling there. And that. So it wasn't too bad a deal. And then, so then from there, we had, I had a niece in Los Angeles, and she got pregnant. And so they didn't, her grandmother, it looked like it insulted her grandmother when her daughter got pregnant. So my wife was uptown, and we was talking, you know, we didn't help children and shit. So she wanted one she had control of. So we sent for her, and she had the baby here, which is this fellow.
Wow.
Yeah, which is this fellow.
And his name is?
Austin Fitzgerald Placide.
Austin?
Austin, L-O-N-T-S-O-N.
Fitzgerald, okay. So this is your niece's son,
Right.
okay?
So
And he lived with you.
I raised him.
Yeah.
We raised him to where he is now.
Where is he now?
He's in Long Beach, California. And after he got here, he started school here. And after she come and had the baby. And when he started school and got about 4 years old, I think, so my wife, we definitely wanted to give him an education. So we sat down at the table and said, you know, and told him and talked and things. And she said when it was time to graduate, he was going to go to the University of Wyoming. I said, he ain't going to the University. I said, and the reason why, because every 5 minutes you're going to want to call him and say, oh, come home on the weekend. So I know that wouldn't get it. She'd have been more, you know how mothers are about children. Yeah. And,
Yeah, I do.
yeah, and thing. And so then in 1977, she died. He was in the same school y'all go to. He was in the 7th grade. He just went into the 7th grade there. So, and I sent to...
At East?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Morgan.
Morgan.
Okay.
So I sent him to school with a note. Wait just a minute, I'm ahead of myself. She was real sick, and she must have felt like she was going to die. And my mama was here, the 2 sisters were here, and myself, and so she told the doctor, said, y'all go up there one at a time, because he seen she was in a lot of this or that.
She's in the hospital?
Oh yeah.
What was her name?
Verna Placide.
V-E-R-N-A?
You're right.
Okay. She's in the hospital, and doctor told you to go up one at a time. Go
Right.
ahead.
So when the last one went up, my mama was the last one to go up there. And no, I got it wrong. When I think it was my sister Kat went up there and said, your mama wanted to see you, and he said okay. So then my mama was the last one went up there, and she said, when you go downstairs, tell one to come up here, which is the nickname he got. And he went up there, and she talked to me. She said, whatever happened, you go to school Monday morning. And she died that night. Yeah.
What did she die from, Melvin?
Cancer.
Cancer.
Yeah, and she had a sugar, and it went into cancer. Yeah. And he went to school. So after he went to school and started school and thing, and we was on the way to the graveyard, and me and him was sitting in the car. he said, I said, how are you? He said, just fine. He said, Daddy, we gonna make it, and things. So then we come on back home and things. And then he got into the midget football and all that, which they won championship. And that when he got into the school where he could play football at the NC, he played quarterback for NC. And so I said to him, I seen what he wanted to do. He wanted to get in the sport. So he was washing the clothes and doing things around the house. So I said, this child cannot play sports, get his lesson, and things. So I told him, I said, I'll wash him and put him in, and on the weekend, you clean up the house and fold the clothes. And sure enough, that's the way we get the thing. So from time to time, he met different, not gonna meet a lot of kids to go to school with, and they were some of the finest kids that I ever been around, and thing. And so they just went from there. And I told him the first time he get in position, get his own business, which I still tell him now, and thing. So I said, anybody, I don't care how good you, anybody will fight. So then that's the way that got started. So then he went to, he went to school, Regan went to,
Pepperdine?
yeah.
Yeah.
He went to Pepperdine for 1 year. So
wow.
yeah, he went to Pepperdine, and then he somehow, they had the coach had 3 of his families on the team. I talked to the coach and so then the coach said, oh yeah, he can reel you. But when he got there, the coach put his family in front of him, which he thought he should have been there. So then he transferred to ULV.
University of in Las Vegas, right?
Right.
Yeah.
University of Las Vegas.
Can I, Alvin, take you back a little bit? Let's go back to where you were moving the restaurant. After the restaurant was moved, was it still called the Owl Cafe?
No, I take sandwich shop.
Just the sandwich shop?
Right.
Okay. Where did you and your wife live then?
At that time,
Yeah.
well, we were living in they had a house on the corner here. We were living there. And thinking, then when we got the restaurant and bought the property from that we moved the restaurant from Bessie Collins, and we built a house in the back of it.
Okay.
And we had some of the best food in town at that time. I know we had the best hamburger in town.
Is this like the late 40s, early 50s then?
This the 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of experiences did you have here in your, after you've gotten here in the late 40s and 50s? Did you experience any discrimination of any kind?
Oh, that's everywhere. I don't care where you go.
Will you talk about it a little bit so these kids will learn from you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I never been really treated about it, because I always stay out the way. See, but I had some, like I said, I met some of the best people here, and the way I carried myself, I made them respect me. Yeah, that made them respect me, and then I didn't drink. No, I never drank alcohol.
What kind of discrimination was there?
The same demonstration, like I said, they got everywhere. Up here is all right, then they go on the head. You see, they go on the head.
Do you know if there was discrimination in housing, employment, those kinds of things?
No, I didn't know no discrimination, because all of the people that I know, I mean, it was, they were in janitorial business and things. And they never did get discriminated, that I know of. But I know it's there.
What's your favorite memory about Castle? What's your favorite memory about Castle?
My favorite remember about Castle, that I met, like I said, I met some of the finest people in the world here. Yeah. They were very nice people. I met many people from all walks of life.
What's your worst memory? What's your worst memory?
What's my worst memory? Oh, I ain't trying to think about my worst. It was a guy that was working for Northern gas company, Northern Utility. That's what it was at that time. And he was here. It was on a Saturday, and he was half drunk and thing. And so then he knew me, and he told me that he would knock me down. I say, if you do, you won't make it. I think that's the worst I ever had. And we had many people come through that restaurant.
It sounds like there were some good restaurants down here. That's.
Oh yeah, at that time. I mean, because we didn't have Burger King and all these other things around here. And like I said, we had the best hamburger in town. And we had spare ribs, barbecue spare ribs, barbecue chicken, and barbecue hot link.
What are those?
That's just like a linked sausage.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Did you have the restaurant for how long? I mean,
We had a restaurant for about 17 years.
and then what did you do?
What did I do? I did do nothing but, go from town to town, gambling. Yeah.
And your wife?
She went to work for some people for a while. And oh yeah, the Urban Renewal come along and it bought our property, and that's we
Yeah, we did interview Marion Moses this morning from the Sandbar Lounge, and he gave them, and me too, and I'm a Casper native, more of an understanding of the Sandbar area. And he talked with us about the urban renewal, okay? He said the sad part about the urban renewal for him was that so many of the people that did live in the Sandbar that he knew then it was, urban renewal bought it up and everybody scattered and he lost contact with so many people.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they in the Urban Renew, when we went to a meeting with the two that was here, I think one of them still here, they told me to go and find a place and think, and they would transfer the cafe to somewhere else. But I didn't want to move the cafe way out there. So I found a place down in the next block on B Street, on A Street, and I had paid a architect. I went to see him, and so then I paid him $750. And when I go back to the Urban Renew, they said some old ladies with tennis shoes don't want the place down. Didn't want nobody down here running a cafe and things. So I told him, no old woman with tennis shoes be out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And he said to me that, no, I asked him, I said, well, who gonna give me my $750 that I done spent? He said, get it out the money that the property and thing. I said, but no, y'all told me to go and get to work in the place. And that's where we bought a house over here on Washington in North Castle. And that's where we were.
Okay. Josh was not with us this morning. He was in church, so he didn't get to hear about the sandbar. Can you tell Josh what the sandbar was in your own words?
The sandbar was a playground.
For adults.
Hmm?
For adults.
Where people go and have fun. You understand? Huh?
I think I did.
You think it is? Yeah.
Mr. Moses did talk to us about the houses of prostitution that were down here and the
Right.
gambling that went on, but he said, it was, and knivings, but he said it was, both blacks and whites that were getting involved in brawls and knife fights and everything, so.
Yeah. And they had a councilman, city council. He had a brother, and every time he get paid, he would get drunk and come down here and stumble around and things. So one night he come down here and he split his head. He fell down and split his head. And so this councilman, that was his brother, he said, let's put some lights down there so the people can see where they're going. And that's how lights got on the sandbar.
Well, that's interesting. Do you know what councilman was that?
I can't think of his name.
Okay. Do you have any other memories or any other knowledge of the Afro-American history here that they should know?
Well, I mean, I don't, other than, I mean, they all had jobs and things, and then, that was about the size of it. Because, you see, by me, at the time, by me going in and out, I wasn't in town too much at that time. And I did come up to the restaurant, cup of coffee, and I'd be in town, and some of them would eat and things. And then some of them would come there, bring the girlfriend there, and dance. So it was a joyful time. Yeah, it was a joyful time.
Would you have a record player there, or was that
A jukebox.
a jukebox?
Yeah.
Do you remember the Cozy Club?
Yeah, it was right across the street, Catacomb, from us.
Can you tell me about it?
It was a sophisticated place. You serve steaks, and I think that was mostly what they, and chicken. And it was a club where the door was locked so they could keep people that wasn't members out.
It was a private club then?
Right.
Jazz?
Hmm?
Was it a jazz club? Was a lot of jazz music played there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And dancing, right?
Right. And
Didn't it eventually move out here on the highway somewhere, the Cozy Club?
it moved, yeah, it moved just on F Street, just below that, yeah, I can't think of the name now, but
I think I know where it is.
yeah, it was about 2 blocks from McKinley on F Street.
But that was a private club for Afro-Americans, wasn't it?
No, that was a private club. That was a private club for John. You see
It
here,
was mixed races then?
right?
Okay. Who ran it, do you remember?
Shirley Gray.
Shelley who?
Shirley Gray.
G-R-A-Y?
Yeah.
Is that person still here, do you know?
No, she's dead. See, all the people that I met and dealt with here and was on the stand, most of them are dead.
Are there any people that you think we should contact that we might not have heard about?
Yeah, I'll get call her in a few minutes, and I'm sure she'll want to know. Want to get you to interview her.
What's her name?
Well, let me talk to her first.
Okay.
Then, because see, and be sure, I mean, that she want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is really your only child, I mean, the one that you raised, right? Your niece's son?
Now I got a daughter.
You've got a daughter too, okay?
Right.
And what was her name? What is her name?
Rosalind, she's married now, Rosalind Kemp.
K-E-M-P?
Right.
Where does she live?
Houston, Texas. She met her husband here.
Okay, so that's probably why, one of the questions Marion asked today, he said he hopes that in these interviews we can kind of figure out why so many of our African-American high school graduates leave and don't stay here. Do you have any idea why?
I know
Right.
why they don't stay. They can't get a decent job.
Okay,
Not only the African American kids, I mean the Caucasian kids leave here. I was talking to a man about 3 or 4 months ago, and you know, and he said, "Oh, I don't see none of the kids around here that I knew." And I said, "They all went out of the state to get them a job." And that's Caucasian kids he was talking about. Yeah.
do you want to ask about graduations?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna find it. The list of graduates that we sent you?
Hmm?
The list of graduates that we sent you?
The list of graduates.
Yeah, did you get that?
Yeah, but you see, I can't see too good. And a lady come in and read it for me, and the only thing I thought was y'all were just going to interview me about me.
Well, if some lady, if she comes back and reads it to you, if you know any of those kids and know where they went, we'd like to know, you know, just, we're gonna do this project right through January, right through Martin Luther King Day in January. We're gonna do the interviews up till then. So if you have time sometime, have somebody read that list to you, and would you tell them what happened to these graduates that you know about, okay, where they are now? Could you do that for us? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
That's part of our history is, you know, where are they now? What are they doing?
Yeah. Well, some of them in Denver, and some of them in California. Got 1 or 2 of them up in buildings that my son was raised with.
Okay. Well, could you mark that down on that sheet then we're there and get it to us? Not today, there's plenty of time. Sometime when you have time and feel like it. Okay?
Yeah.
Any other questions, Josh? Want to ask anything? Anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah. Let me think. The one thing that's great about the city is it's a lot of good people here, period. And I don't think I would have ever got to send my son to these 2 schools if I hadn't have been here. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think it would happen, because it wasn't the kind of money, and I met people, I mean, that was willing to help. Yeah.
So So overall, you've been very happy here.
Oh, yeah, I've had 3 operations since the 7th of, since the 7th of December. Had operation on my eyes, had operation from a blood clot in his left leg, and then operate on this side because I can't tell you, but I had to have that too. You see, and I had 3 different operations.
You gonna let me take a picture of you without the sunglasses, or will the flash hurt too much?
Well, I'm gonna keep on the sunglasses.
Okay, that's fine. Can I take a picture of you next to your Duke Ellington print?
Yeah.
Okay, you wanna go stand over there then?
Okay. Get you over here.
Yeah, he's getting it. Do you mind if I... Okay. Let's see, Chris, go ahead and squeeze in a little bit more, Stephanie and Crystal and Chris. Don't worry about blocking the print, okay? Go right in with him, okay? There you go. That's good. One more cheese.
Cheese.
Great, thanks a lot, Alvin.
You want welcome.
Did you want to make that phone call to that woman and we'll get her name and phone number before we leave?
Yeah, that's what I'll do that right now.
Okay. Be sure to thank him and shake his hand, Sheree.
You're so
Kind of a neat guy, huh?